I've lived in this town my entire life. It's small, quiet, the kind of place where nothing really happens, except in stories people make up to kill time. You grow up hearing about things out in the woods, about old houses that were supposedly swallowed up by the trees, but no one really believes any of it. Not until you see something for yourself. And by then, it's too late. It was late summer when it happened. One of those thick, sweltering nights where the heat just lingers in the air long after the sun's gone down. The kind of night where you feel restless, like something's crawling just under your skin. That's probably why we ended up out there to begin with. Boredom, more than anything else. Me, my girlfriend Ashley, her younger brother Ben, and two of our close friends, Tyler and Jess. We were all looking for something to do. Someplace to go where we could shake off the heaviness of the air and pretend there was something exciting about living here. We'd been driving around for hours, cruising through town, down streets we knew like the backs of our hands. Everything was closed, the streets empty except for the occasional streetlight buzzing faintly overhead. After a while, Tyler, who was driving, suggested we head out past the old mill, toward the back roads. Might as well, he said. At least it's not the same crap we see every night. We all agreed, half out of curiosity, half because no one had a better idea. The paved roads gave way to dirt after a few miles, and the houses disappeared behind us. Trees pressed in closer on both sides as we went deeper, their branches forming a kind of canopy that blotted out what little moonlight there was. It should have been peaceful, but it wasn't. Not really. There was a tension I couldn't quite shake. Maybe it was the way the headlights caught the trees just right, throwing jagged shadows across the road like skeletal fingers reaching out to grab us. Or maybe it was how quiet it was. No crickets, no frogs. Not even the rustle of leaves in the wind. Just the sound of tires crunching over gravel and the low hum of the engine. Ashley sat beside me in the back seat, tapping her fingers nervously against her thigh. Ben was quiet too, staring out the window like he was trying to find something in the darkness. Jess was the only one who seemed calm, leaning her head back and watching the treetops blur past. After a while, we came to a fork in the road. One path looked more or less normal, still dirt, but wide enough for two cars to pass, with tire tracks fresh enough to tell us someone had been down there recently. The other path wasn't like that. It was narrower, overgrown, with weeds creeping up the middle and branches arching low overhead like they were trying to block the way. None of us had ever noticed it before. I've lived here all my life, and I didn't even know this road existed. "Let's take that one," Tyler said, slowing the car to a crawl as he pointed toward the overgrown path. Ashley frowned. "Are you serious?" "Come on," he said. "It's probably just an old logging road or something. We'll go for a bit, then turn around if it sucks." I should have said something. I should have told him to turn around and take us home. But I didn't. None of us did. Instead, we all sat there in silence while Tyler eased the car onto the path, the tires crunching over weeds and snapping twigs beneath them. The further we went, the worse the road got. Potholes deep enough to make the car jolt violently every few feet. Mud thick and black, clinging to the tires. After about 20 minutes, we realized there was no way we could turn around. The trees were too close on either side, their trunks pushing right up to the edges of the narrow track. We were stuck going forward until we found a place wide enough to reverse. The trees here were different. Older maybe, bigger. Their bark was pale in the headlights, almost white, and the way the branches tangled overhead blocked out the sky completely. It felt like we were underground, or inside some hollowed-out tunnel. We hadn't seen another house, another car, hell, not even a mailbox, in almost half an hour. And still, there was nothing but the road stretching endlessly ahead of us. Then we hit something. Not hard, but enough to jolt us in our seats. Tyler cursed and brought the car to a stop. Up ahead, 2 thick tree limbs had fallen across the road, completely blocking our path. They didn't look freshly fallen. There were no leaves on them, and they were brittle and gray, like they'd been dead for a long time. But they were right in the middle of the road, perfectly placed to stop us. "Guess this is it," Tyler said, killing the engine. "We'll clear it, then head back." We all got out. The heat hit me immediately, thick and suffocating. The air smelled different here too, wet and heavy, with a faint undercurrent of something sour. I tried not to think about it as we approached the fallen limbs. They were heavier than they looked, but between the 5 of us, we managed to drag them off to the side of the road. Every snap of dead wood made the silence feel sharper, like we were breaking something we shouldn't have touched. When we were done, Tyler looked back at the car and frowned. "What the hell?" he muttered. The headlights, which he'd left on, had dimmed to almost nothing. They flickered faintly, then died completely, leaving us standing there in the dark. He jogged back and popped the hood, checking the battery, but there was nothing obviously wrong. That was the first moment I felt real fear. Not the creeping unease I'd been ignoring, but something colder, something deeper. Because even after Tyler got back in and tried to start the car, the engine didn't make a sound. Not a click, not a whir, nothing. It was like the battery had just disappeared. I glanced at Ashley. Her face was pale, and she kept glancing over her shoulder into the trees. Ben stood rigid, his hands clenched at his sides. Jess was pacing, muttering under her breath. "We should go back," Ashley said quietly. "We should walk back to the fork." Tyler shook his head. "We're at least 2 miles in. We'd be walking forever." "Better than staying here," Jess whispered. I looked down the road. The trees ahead seemed to lean in closer now, like they were waiting. I couldn't hear anything, but somehow I knew we weren't alone. "Not anymore. We'll figure something out," Tyler said, though he didn't sound convinced. "Maybe there's a house or something up ahead." None of us believed that, but we didn't have much of a choice. We left the car behind and started walking. We didn't talk much as we walked. There wasn't much to say. Every so often, Tyler would glance back over his shoulder at the car, as if hoping it would magically flicker back to life. It never did. The deeper we went, the more I felt like we were moving through something we shouldn't have entered in the first place. Like this place wasn't just old or forgotten, but wrong. At first, I told myself it was just the dark playing tricks on me. But as we pushed further down the road, things started to change in ways I couldn't explain. The road didn't curve, not even once. It stretched straight ahead, like it had been drawn with a ruler. And no matter how far we walked, the trees on either side stayed the same. Those pale trunks, their bark peeling in long strips, the same dead branches knotted above our heads. It was as if we were moving, but nothing around us was. I glanced at my phone. No signal. Not surprising, but it still made my stomach twist a little. I didn't want to mention it, but when I looked around, I saw the others checking theirs too. Same result. Ben tried turning his flashlight app on. and it flickered for a second before dying completely. We tried Jess's phone next. Same thing. Even Tyler's emergency flashlight wouldn't turn on. Batteries that had worked just fine an hour ago were suddenly useless. "This doesn't make sense," Tyler said quietly. He wasn't arguing anymore. He wasn't trying to play it off as no big deal. His face was pale, his jaw tight. "It's fine," Jess whispered, though she was shaking. "It's fine. We just need to find a house. Someone to help." The thing is, we hadn't seen any side paths. No driveways. Not even a mailbox. Just this single endless road, flanked by trees that didn't belong. But we kept walking, because what else could we do? After what felt like an hour, though none of us could say for sure, we saw something up ahead. A shape. A break in the trees. At first, I thought it was a clearing, and I felt this sharp, stupid relief. But as we got closer, I realized it wasn't a clearing at all. It was a sign. An old wooden one, leaning at an angle like it had been there forever. It was half swallowed by the undergrowth, vines crawling up the rotted post. Tyler was the first to reach it, brushing away the dirt and leaves with his hand. I stood behind him, squinting to make out the words in the dim light. "Welcome to Ashmore." I felt my stomach drop. Ashmore wasn't a town. At least, not one I'd ever heard of. And I'd lived in this county my entire life. There was no Ashmore on any map. I was sure of it. "Where the hell is this?" Jess muttered. Ben was staring at the sign, like he was trying to burn it into his memory. "I've never heard of Ashmore," he said slowly. "Not once." Tyler looked back at me. "You?" I shook my head. "No, never." Ashley moved closer, her voice tight. "We should turn back." She was right, but when I turned around to look behind us, my heart skipped a beat. The road wasn't there. Not the one we came from. Not the car. Not even the fork where we made the choice to come down this path. Just more trees. Pale and skeletal. Endless. "What the hell?" Jess whispered, backing toward us. "We didn't turn," Ben said. His voice cracked a little. "We didn't turn around." But it didn't matter. We were surrounded now. Swallowed up by this place. "We keep going," Tyler said, though he looked sick saying it. "We keep going until we find something." So we walked. The road changed after that. Subtle at first. The dirt beneath our feet became soft, almost spongy, like wet moss. The air got thicker, the smell sharper, like something rotting deep in the earth. The silence deepened too. It wasn't just quiet anymore. It was dead. No wind. No insects. No sounds from our own footsteps. Like the ground was muffling everything. That's when we started hearing other things. It was faint at first. A whisper. Just one. Soft enough that I thought it was the wind, even though there was no wind. Then another. And another. Voices we couldn't make out, but that circled us as we walked. Ashley grabbed my hand, holding it tight. Her fingers were ice cold. "Do you hear that?" she asked, her voice shaking. I nodded. Yeah, the others heard it too. We all kept moving, but the whispers followed. Sometimes they drifted closer, just behind my ear. Close enough that I could feel the breath of them against my skin. And every time I turned to look, there was nothing there. Just trees. Always those damn trees. Ben stopped suddenly. "Did you see that?" he asked. "See what?" Tyler said. Ben pointed to the left side of the road. There was something there. In the trees. I stared hard at the spot he was pointing at. At first, I saw nothing, but then movement. Quick, pale, like someone stepping back, just out of sight. I felt the hair on the back of my neck stand up. "There's something following us," Jess whispered. No one argued. We kept moving. Eventually, we came to a house. At least, I think it was a house once. It stood just off the side of the road, crooked and sagging, its roof half caved in. The windows were broken, the door hanging open like a mouth frozen mid-scream. But it was shelter, and at that moment that was enough. Tyler hesitated at the edge of the path leading to it. "We can't stay out here," he said. "Whatever's out there is getting closer." He wasn't wrong. The whispers were louder now. Closer. Almost words. Almost. We made our way toward the house. As we stepped onto the porch, the boards creaked under our weight. The door swung wider on rusted hinges, and inside darkness. But not empty. We could feel it. Something waiting in there. "Stay close," Tyler said. We entered the house, leaving the endless road behind us, for now. The air inside the house was thicker than outside. Stale, like it hadn't been breathed in years, centuries maybe. Every step we took on the warped floorboards sent up a faint cloud of dust that made my throat itch. Ashley was gripping my arm so tightly that I could feel her nails digging through my sleeve. But I didn't tell her to stop. I needed the contact, just as much as she did. Tyler led the way, holding his dead flashlight like a weapon. I don't know why. It wasn't going to help if something was in here with us. But I guess we all wanted something to hold on to. The main room was empty, except for an old, broken chair tipped on its side. The walls were stained a dark, ugly brown, like something had seeped down them over time. There were shapes scratched into the wood near the door, symbols I didn't recognize. Deep gouges that looked old, but somehow fresh at the same time. They gave me the same feeling I got looking at roadkill. A mix of pity and revulsion and fear. "I don't like this," Jess whispered, her breath puffing out white in the cold. "We're just gonna stay long enough to figure out what's going on," Tyler said, though I could hear in his voice he was lying. He didn't believe that. None of us did. We moved deeper into the house. There was a narrow hallway leading to what must have once been bedrooms. Every door was slightly open, but none of us wanted to be the first to push one wider. I was pretty sure I could hear something behind them, shuffling, soft breathing, like someone waiting just on the other side. "We stay together," Ben said. "We don't split up." No one argued. We checked the first room. Empty, except for a mattress on the floor, torn open, its stuffing spilling out like guts. The second was worse. There was a crib in there, old and rusted. The walls were covered in handprints, small ones, dozens of them, smeared in something dark that flaked when Jess brushed it with her sleeve. She pulled back fast and didn't touch anything else. "What happened here?" she asked, but no one answered. We didn't talk much after that. The third door led to the basement stairs. I don't know why we stopped there. None of us had any intention of going down. The stairwell was pitch black, even with the faint gray light filtering through the broken windows. It felt like something was breathing up from below. Cold air, thick and wet, curling around our ankles. I could almost hear it whispering. Not like outside. This was different. Lower, closer, more personal. "Shut it," Ashley said suddenly, shoving the door closed. The latch clicked, and she stepped back. wiping her hands on her jeans like she'd touched something foul. "We're not going down there." She was right. We had no business even thinking about it. We found what was probably the living room and decided to stay there, at least for a little while. It had 4 walls and no windows left intact. It felt safer, even though that was a lie. Ben dragged an old coffee table in front of the doorway, like it would hold anything off if it wanted in. Tyler stood near the broken window, peering out through the jagged glass. Jess sat on the floor with her arms wrapped around her knees. Ashley stuck close to me. I didn't mind. The whispers outside hadn't stopped. They were louder now, clearer, like they knew we were trapped and they didn't have to hide anymore. "I can't understand them," Ben said suddenly, "but they know my name." "What?" Jess looked up sharply. "They said my name," he repeated, staring at the door. "I heard it. Just now." We all went silent, straining to hear. And then we did. Ben, a whisper just outside the door, clear as day. Jess's breath hitched. "No, no, no, no." Then another voice. "Ashley." Soft, sweet, wrong. Ashley squeezed my hand until it hurt. "Don't listen," Tyler said firmly. "Ignore it." But it wasn't just names anymore. The whispers started to sound like people we knew. Ben's mother, Jess's little brother, my dad, who'd been dead 5 years. "Let me in," it said in his voice. "Open the door, please." I closed my eyes, breathing hard. I knew it wasn't him. I knew. But hearing his voice again, it almost broke me. It sounded just like him. The tone, the way he used to say my name when he was worried. My throat burned. Ashley whispered in my ear, "It's not him." I know, but it hurt. The whispers circled us, over and over, like sharks waiting for the right moment. Time didn't make sense anymore. We sat there for hours, or maybe minutes. Jess started crying at one point. Silent tears, just rolling down her face. She didn't wipe them away. Then something slammed against the wall behind us. We jumped up fast. Another bang, this time near the boarded window. Then the door rattled, like something was trying to force it open. "Upstairs," Tyler said. Now, we didn't argue. We ran. The stairs groaned under our weight, but didn't break. The second floor was colder, darker. There was a single room with a door still intact. We shoved inside and pushed an old dresser in front of it. Inside it smelled worse, like old rot and something metallic. But it was a door between us and them. Ashley crouched next to me. Jess sat with her back to the wall, sobbing quietly. Ben was pacing, his hands shaking. Tyler stood near the door, holding a piece of broken wood like a bat. I checked my phone again. Still dead. Still no signal. It felt stupid, but I had to do it. "We have to get out of here," Jess said suddenly. Her voice was shaking, but her eyes were wild. "We have to leave." "We will," Tyler promised, "when it's quiet again." But it didn't get quiet. The noises downstairs got worse. Heavy footsteps, dragging sounds, breathing. It was like they knew we were cornered. And then laughter, soft, childlike, from the hallway just outside our door. Ashley covered her ears. Ben froze. Jess started whispering no over and over again. Tyler moved closer to the door, listening. The laughter stopped. Something scraped against the door, slow and deliberate. And then it spoke. "I see you." Ashley squeezed her eyes shut. Ben swore under his breath. The knob twisted once, then again. Tyler held the wood tighter, his arms tense. Then nothing. Silence. For a moment, none of us moved. We barely breathed. And then the door creaked open. The dresser hadn't budged, but the door was opening anyway. I don't remember moving. 1 second I was frozen on the floor, staring at the door slowly opening by itself, and the next Tyler was dragging me back by the collar of my jacket. His breathing was harsh, panicked. The wooden dresser we'd shoved in front of the door hadn't moved an inch, but the door still opened. Like it wasn't there. Like we weren't there. Ashley was clutching my sleeve again, her whole body trembling so hard I could feel it. Jess was whispering something over and over in a loop. I caught the words once. "Don't let them in. Don't let them in." I forced myself to stand. My legs felt like they belonged to someone else. Heavy, slow. My heartbeat was a dull roar in my ears. But I had to move. Had to do something. Tyler pointed to the window. "We're leaving." "What?" I rasped. It felt like I hadn't spoken in hours. He grabbed the corner of the dresser and shoved it away from the door with a grunt. "We can't stay. You saw it. This isn't stopping." The door was still slowly opening, wide enough now that I could see out into the hallway. It was darker there. No light. And I swear on everything, that something was crouched just beyond the doorframe, watching. We bolted for the window. Tyler smashed the last of the broken glass out with his jacket wrapped around his arm. It was a long drop to the ground, maybe 15 feet, but we didn't have a choice. He swung his legs out first, hung there for a second, then dropped. He landed badly, crumpling to one knee, but gave us a thumbs up. Jess went next. She hesitated, crying, but I helped her get over the edge. She dropped. I heard her grunt when she hit. Ashley looked at me. "I can't." "You can," I lied. "I'll be right behind you." Her breath hitched, but she nodded. She climbed out. I watched her lower herself as far as she could, and then fall the rest of the way. She landed hard, but she was up fast, limping toward Jess and Tyler. I swung one leg over the sill, glanced back. The door was wide open now. The thing in the hallway was standing there. I couldn't make out its face. There was a shape, but it wasn't right. Too long. Too thin. It was almost like someone had stretched a person until they weren't a person anymore. It tilted its head at me, like it was curious. I jumped. The landing nearly knocked the air out of me. My ankle screamed when I hit, but I was up and hobbling toward the others before I even registered the pain. We didn't wait. We ran. We didn't stop at the tree line this time. We pushed straight through it. Jess was sobbing openly now, but she didn't slow down. Ashley kept glancing behind us. I didn't. I was too afraid of what I'd see. The woods were wrong again. We were going downhill, I think. The trees were closer together, gnarled and twisted, their branches clawing at us like fingers. The air was colder. The light, there wasn't any. It was like night had fallen, but it hadn't. Not really. And those whispers were still with us. Following. Circling. I heard my name again. Dozens of times. Different voices. My father. My best friend from middle school. My first girlfriend. People I hadn't thought about in years. They all said the same thing. Come back. You're safe here. I kept running. After what felt like hours, we stumbled into another clearing. This one was worse. The ground was soft and wet, and when my foot sank into it, it wasn't mud. It was something else. Something sticky that clung to my shoe and made a wet sound when I yanked it free. Bones stuck out of the ground here. Hundreds of them. Some small. Some too big to be human. Some still had scraps of clothing hanging from them. Jess screamed when she saw them and collapsed to her knees. Tyler grabbed her, hauling her up. Ashley made a choking sound and covered her mouth. "We can't stop," Tyler said. "Keep moving." There was a path on the other side of the clearing, a narrow one. We took it. The path spiraled down, deeper into the earth. At least, that's how it felt. The air got heavier with each step. The trees above us thinned out until there weren't any anymore. Just bare earth walls rising high on both sides. I realized where we were when I saw the entrance. A wide hole in the ground, almost like a cave. But there was wood framing it, like it had been built or excavated. Ben was already standing at the mouth of it when we caught up. His face was pale and slick with sweat. "There's nowhere else," he said quietly. "This is it." I shook my head. "No, we can't go in there." But the path behind us was gone. Just a wall of roots and dirt where we'd come from. I looked at Tyler. He was staring at the hole like it was a death sentence. But he nodded. "We go." We stepped inside. The tunnel was narrow and cold. The walls were damp, slick with moisture. The air smelled like old blood. We moved slowly, our footsteps echoing softly. There were noises in the dark ahead, soft ones, shuffling, breathing. We turned a corner, and the passage opened into a larger chamber. And there they were, the things. There were dozens of them, pale thin, their arms too long, their faces blank except for wide, black eyes that gleamed in the dark. They didn't move. They just stood there, watching us. Ashley whimpered. Jess started crying again. One of them stepped forward, slowly, its head tilted in that same curious way the thing upstairs had done. Then it opened its mouth. Rows of teeth. Endless. Sharp. "You shouldn't be here," it said. The voice was wrong. Layered. Too many at once. Tyler stepped in front of us. "We're leaving." The thing laughed. A dry, crackling sound. "No one leaves." The others moved then. Slowly at first, then faster. We ran. Back into the tunnel. Back through the cold. The sounds behind us were wet and fast. Hands slapping on stone, claws scraping. They were faster than us. I knew they were. But we didn't stop. We burst out of the tunnel into another clearing. This one was different. There was a house here. Not old. New. Lights on in the windows. I didn't think. None of us did. We ran for it. Tyler pounded on the door. "Help. Please help us." The door opened. An old woman stood there, frowning. "You shouldn't be here," she said, the same way the thing had. But she let us in. We stumbled inside, gasping for breath. The door slammed behind us on its own. The lights inside flickered. The house smelled like dust and herbs. The woman pointed to the floor. "Sit." We did. She brought us water. It tasted clean. She watched us drink, her expression unreadable. "You've seen them," she said. None of us spoke. "They don't like when people wander in," she went on. "But they can't have you yet. Not if I say no." Ashley found her voice. "What are they?" The woman's eyes darkened. "Not ghosts. Not demons. Not anything you have words for. We sat in silence. "You'll have to leave in the morning," she said, "and you'll never come back." I nodded. We all did. But I knew, even then, it wasn't over. I barely slept that night, even in the old woman's house. With the doors locked and the windows shuttered, I could still hear them. Not voices, not whispers anymore. Just breathing, slow and steady, like something huge was waiting just outside. Like it knew where we were. The others had curled up on the floor near the fireplace. Tyler kept his back against the wall, his pocket knife clenched so tightly in his fist that his knuckles turned white. Jess was still shaking in her sleep, muttering under her breath. Ashley had stopped crying, but she wouldn't let go of my hand. The old woman didn't sleep at all. She just sat in her chair, watching the door. At some point in the early morning hours, she finally spoke. "It's time." We got up. Quiet. Numb. She handed Tyler a small pouch. Told him not to open it. Said it would keep them away. At least long enough for us to get out. I didn't ask what was in it. I didn't want to know. She pointed to a narrow path behind the house. Said it would lead us back to the road. But we had to stay on it. No matter what we heard. No matter what we saw. We thanked her, or tried to. She just shook her head. "Don't come back." Then she turned and shut the door. The path she told us about was barely wide enough for us to walk single file. It twisted and turned through thick trees and overgrown brush, the kind that clawed at our legs and arms like they didn't want us to leave. But there was light now. Pale, gray daylight breaking through the branches. And for the first time in hours, maybe days, I felt something like hope. We walked. At first, it was quiet, just the sound of our feet on the dirt and leaves, the wind in the trees, birds even, normal sounds, but it didn't stay that way. After a while, we started hearing footsteps behind us, heavy ones, steady. Tyler looked back more than once. Every time, he shook his head. Nothing there, but we heard them. Closer each time. Jess kept looking off the path. Her face was pale again. "I see them," she whispered. "Don't," Tyler said sharply. "Eyes forward." Ashley stumbled. I caught her, helped her stand. Her eyes were wide, staring at something I couldn't see. "They're waiting." I didn't answer. I didn't want to hear it. We kept moving. Faster now. The path was sloping up, and my legs burned, but I didn't stop. None of us did. And then we heard Ben scream. It was close. Too close. But when we spun around, he wasn't there. "Ben!" Ashley shouted. Tyler grabbed her. "No. Keep going." She fought him, but only for a second. Then she ran. We all did. More screams followed. Some of them sounded like Ben. Some didn't. Some sounded like people I knew. My mom. My little sister. My own voice. I shut my ears to them. Or tried to. The path ended in a clearing. Wide and empty. The road was just beyond it. I could see it. Paved, cracked asphalt. A real road. Tyler handed me the pouch. "You go first." I didn't argue. I took a deep breath and ran. The air changed when I crossed into the clearing. Heavy. It felt like wading through water. The whispers were louder. They were begging now. Pleading. "Stay. Just for a second. Look back. Please." I didn't. I didn't stop until I hit the road. My knees gave out. I hit the ground hard, but I didn't care. I was out. Jess was next. She ran, screaming the whole way. She made it. collapsed next to me, sobbing. Ashley came after her, limping but fast. She nearly fell at the edge, but Jess caught her and pulled her the rest of the way. Tyler was last. He was halfway across when he stumbled. Something grabbed his ankle. He shouted, kicking hard, and I saw the thing that had him. A hand, too long, too many fingers, pale and gray, with skin stretched thin over bone. I ran toward him without thinking. Jess screamed for me to stop, but I didn't. Tyler fought. I grabbed his arm and pulled. The hand wouldn't let go. He threw the pouch at me. "Open it," he shouted. I did, and I wish I hadn't. Inside was something black and wet. It writhed when I opened the pouch. Smoked. The air filled with a rotten stench, and the thing that had Tyler's leg screamed. It let go. I yanked Tyler free, and we both ran. We didn't stop until we were back on the road, gasping for breath. The clearing behind us went quiet. No more voices, no more whispers, just silence. We stood there for a long time. I don't know how long. Long enough for the sun to rise a little higher. Long enough for the road to feel solid under my feet. We started walking. The road was cracked and broken in places, but it was real. We followed it for miles. Didn't say much. There wasn't anything to say. Eventually, we saw a car, parked on the side of the road, engine running. No driver. We didn't question it. Tyler got in the front seat. Jess climbed in back with Ashley and me. The keys were in the ignition. Tyler turned them, and the car started like it had been waiting for us. We drove. I don't remember how long. Hours. Days, maybe. The roads changed. Got smoother. Straighter. Signs started to appear. Real towns. Gas stations. Eventually, we found a diner. Tyler pulled in. We sat inside for a long time, drinking bad coffee, not talking. Jess finally broke the silence. What was that place? None of us answered. We finished our coffee, left cash on the table, walked out. I thought about calling someone. The cops, forest rangers, someone, but I didn't. We got back in the car and drove. I haven't seen Ben since. I don't know if he made it out. I don't think he did. We don't talk about it, any of it. But sometimes, late at night, I hear those whispers again. Faint, at the edge of hearing. And I wonder if we really escaped, or if we just brought it back with us. If you enjoyed this chilling story, don't forget to subscribe to Beyond Fear and hit the bell icon so you won't miss any of our upcoming videos. Here, you'll find more real stories filled with mystery, psychological horror, and the supernatural every week. Before you go, make sure to check out the 2 videos that just popped up in the end screen. I promise, they'll leave you with goosebumps. See you next time, if you dare.